Okay, Councilors Daigle, Gamache, Higgins, and Rossignol, if you could take your seats, and we'll move on to our next committee meeting. Thank you. Good evening, and welcome to Municipal Safety Committee meeting with myself as chair and Councilors Daigle, Gamache, Higgins, and Rossignol. On the committee, also in attendance, Councilors Beach, Melville, Gould are present as well. So with us tonight, we have Captain Richards, who's kind enough to join us and give us an update on several areas of concern in the city, in particular speeding and any accidents in certain areas. And we'd like to start off with Walnut Street and Howley Street. Captain, if you could come up and update us with whatever data you have, I'd appreciate it.
Thank you for being a kind host to me here tonight. I'm going to do the best I can. So there's 4 areas on the agenda, and we'll start off with Walnut Street at Howley Street. So I did an accident distribution study, or collected accident data from that location. And what we found over the last, actually 9 years, I went back to 2016. We typically don't go back that far, but I did because the COVID years are in the middle, and I didn't want to have them where there was a lot of not traffic out there. I didn't want those to skew the results, so I went back quite a ways. But at Howley Street at Walnut Street, since 2016 to present day, there's been a total of 8 crashes. Now, that doesn't sound like a lot, and it's not, but I just want to know where I get this data from. This data is mine from MassDOT. It's from all the accidents that have been reported to MassDOT through police departments, whether it be the Peabody Police, the state police, or anybody else that may have taken an accident at that intersection. There could be more accidents that occurred there, fender benders where people exchanged their own papers, didn't call the police, but we don't have any knowledge of those. So there was 8 accidents in total during that period of time. And in 2004, so far this year, we have none listed at that location. Speeding issues are always a problem, but accidents really tell the tale of how dangerous an intersection is. And right now, the number of crashes that we have documented at that intersection is not significant enough to make it a major problem. I know the councilor has some questions probably about that intersection and some issues with it, and I'll allow her to certainly speak on that. But that's the crash data, and usually the crash data is pretty indicative of how dangerous a spot is.
Thank you, Captain. Council Beach.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Captain Richards, for bringing that data. I think what we're probably seeing here is just unreported accidents that are occurring. My big concern, it's this intersection has been brought up to me since I was elected. It's been an intersection I tend to avoid prior to being elected. When you're taking a left from Howley Street onto Walnut Street, you're essentially taking a blind left. You don't have view of the cars coming from Harmony Grove, from Salem into Peabody. And just because of the width of Harmony Grove, the lack of residential or business that's on Harmony Grove for a large stretch, the traffic is usually speeding. I want to say the speed limit is probably 25, maybe 30 there, but I think most cars are coming through that intersection 35 to 40. And it's just been something that's brought up to me by residents, people that utilize that intersection daily, and then now having a new business at the corner there, the Boyd Cycles, has been brought up to me as well because they hear the constant laying on horns for the near misses that occur daily at this intersection. My concern really is the additional development that has occurred and continues to occur at the end of Harmony Grove and Salem. There's significantly more residential down there. There's new residential that's being built. I don't believe it's open yet, but the buildings are up kind of like behind where the Moose Lodge was. So just adding, I mean, these aren't, 20 unit buildings, these are 100 plus unit building. So my concern really is what can we do, because the traffic volume is only going to get worse. I'm told, I couldn't find any evidence of this, like on our ordinance books or anything like that, but I'm told from people who have been in the neighborhood for decades that there used to be a stop sign coming from Salem to Peabody. I don't remember that. So I wanted to put it on Peabody Police's radar. I think if you're not getting the calls for accidents, then it might not be on your radar. I don't personally take a left-hand turn out of that intersection unless it's at night, because at night I can see the headlights coming around the corner, so I at least know when it's safe to go. But also you have the traffic coming from Peabody, which most of the traffic, I would say half the traffic probably takes a right onto Howley Street there, doesn't continue down Harmony Grove. A lot of people, I think, assume people are going to take a right, and that's probably where we get those near misses as well. So it's kind of a dangerous intersection, in my opinion, from all directions. And I know Councilor Gould has been talking about this for many years prior to myself joining the council, because he's heard from the same residents that have these concerns. So, I know the numbers are showing that it's definitely not the most dangerous intersection in Peabody. It probably has significantly less traffic through it. My concern is as there's an approved development on Walnut Street that was a 40B project, that's an additional 132 or 36 units on that street. The additional units that are going up in Salem, at some point, I would hate to see, because of the speed of the cars that come from Salem, because they have just basically a straightaway, a fatal accident occur there. I think we'd have to work with Salem in some way in order to change this intersection. As far as, I know Salem has speed bumps on some of their roads, but working in tandem, I don't know, with the Salem police and the Peabody police and our councils, if we'd be able to come up with some idea that would make this a little bit safer. So thank you.
Do you have any response?
The only thing I'd like to say to that is I can certainly reach out to the traffic division of the Salem PD, and we can get down there and walk the area and do some joint enforcement and try to get some data on the speeds of the cars. I don't know if Salem has the speed radar boards that we have. Maybe they can install one on their section of the road to see if that could help mitigate things a little bit, and we can certainly monitor the area and take a look at it and see, as the things progress, what we might be able to do to help mitigate the problem. So certainly there's steps we can take to try to work with Salem to try to help that situation out.
Excellent, thank you. Councilor Gould.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. Thank you, Captain Richards, for being here, helping us out. Thank you, Madam President, for initiating the conversation. Captain, the criteria for putting up a stop sign, what is that?
Generally, as a rule, stop signs are not supposed to be used to slow cars down. MassDOT has rules, and the rules are tried to, lights and signs like that, they're supposed to only be used if crash data suggests that it's a danger in that area. We don't try to suppress speed and stop cars with stop signs just for the sake of stopping cars and slowing cars down. They try to encourage the free flow of traffic, so the less signs and the less lights, the better. But certainly if it becomes that big of an issue, especially a dangerous issue, that's something that we can, talk to about an ordinance to do that.
Captain, you and I have been there personally looking at the intersection a couple times, and it is a very dangerous point. As Madam President mentioned, nighttime helps with the headlights, but when you pull out off of Howley onto Walnut, you're just hoping that there's not a car coming that you didn't see. So in your opinion, what would be the next step besides getting Salem together and looking, how would we initiate a stop sign request?
Well, we certainly get down there and look, and apparently there's a sightline issue, I guess, with the building that's there on the corner. So we do get out. I might even ask the city engineer to get down there with me and take a look at the corner on the sightline problem that exists with that building there and see if that can be remedied somehow, or any kind of markings that could help out there or anything like that. And then I would work with Salem, and because I believe if there's going to be a stop sign put in that street, if it's coming in from Salem, it may have to be Salem that does it, depending upon where the line is. If it's in Peabody, we can do it, but if it's at that Salem-Peabody line, they may have to do it, but we could work with them to try to create an ordinance to take care of that.
Okay, thank you, because in my opinion, and I'm not a traffic engineer or even, public safety official, but there's going to be a major accident there that is going to be unfortunately, it's going to happen soon. So thank you. Thank you, Madam Chairwoman.
Thank you. Any other questions on that intersection? Being none, we will move on to Lynn Street and Bartholomew, and if it behooves you, you can roll in Lynn Street and Fairview, because it's kind of the same area.
I'll deal with both issues. I'll deal with Lynn Street at Bartholomew Street first. Again, I went over that same time frame, and there's been a total over that time frame of 23 crashes at that intersection. Only 3 or 4 a year. 2020 had none. 2022, we had 8 accidents at that intersection, so there was a spike in accidents in 22, and I'm not sure why, if there was road construction going on there or whatever was happening, but there was a spike in crashes in 22. But overall, there was 23 crashes, which averages out about 2.5 crashes a year. Lynn Street at Bartholomew Street, we all know with the volume of traffic that's on Lynn Street, and I don't want to conflate two issues. We have a speeding issue sometimes, but we also have volume issues. That's a different thing. And I think in that area, it's not so much a speed problem, but a volume problem. And a volume problem is very difficult to mitigate and deal with unless you have alternatives for cars to go different places. Going from Peabody into Lynn and vice versa, there's a tremendous amount of traffic that goes down that road. And most of the accidents, and I have all the reports here, most of those accidents, they were almost carbon copies of people sitting on Bartholomew Street, waiting to pull out onto Lynn Street. Some people lose patience, see a little bit of a gap between 2 cars and try to zip out and get out into the traffic, and they wind up T-boning somebody or hitting the back of a car going by. Most of the accidents were that type of accident. So a volume issue, there's not a lot you can do with it. I mean, short of putting a set of traffic signals there, that street is going to be what it is, and we could monitor it and have some police presence out there, but I don't think that's going to help the accident issue that they've had out there. It's a matter of volume at that intersection.
Council Welton.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you very much, Captain Richards, for coming here. We've seen with a lot of success the traffic mitigation issues, the traffic mitigation measures at Linfield and Bartholomew. A number of residents, obviously, I live right down the street from this intersection between Lynn and Bartholomew, and a number of residents have brought up the suggestion of maybe the road is too wide in that area, and I wanted to hear from you if maybe a road dieting is, I think, what it's referenced as, is kind of restricting the lanes a little bit, being that one of the issues seems to be by Veterans Memorial when folks are taking a left, or at Lynn and Bartholomew when folks are taking a right, the road is wide enough so that folks will kind of come around the other side, whether it's coming on the inside when they're going to Veterans Memorial, or vice versa on the outside when they're taking a right onto Bartholomew. Just wondering if you think maybe making that a little more narrow might be helpful, or if there's anything that we could possibly even try on a temporary basis.
I mean, we could explore that. I will say when I looked at all the accidents, there was actually only one of these accidents was a car taking a left into the restaurant across the street and a car going around it and hitting a car coming out of Bartholomew Street. There was only one of the 23 that fit that criteria. Most of them were just cars just pulling out, trying to get out into traffic. So we'd have to look to see if there's fog lines there and see what I'd probably go out there with the city engineer and take a look at it and see what the width of the street is and what markings are there now and see if there's anything that we could do to try to help that. But that doesn't seem to be the proximate cause of these crashes.
Thank you. And then the other issue that I think you're aware of there is solar glare coming up over Lynn Street, heading towards Lynn, later in the afternoon. And I don't know, obviously there's not much we can do with solar glare, but have you seen signage be effective or any warning signs or anything that we might want to pursue?
A sign telling somebody about a solar flare that if they can't see the cars in front of them, they're not going to see a sign in front of them either. So I don't think that's going to help too much.
No, I appreciate that. I think it's as you mentioned, you know, I hate the phrase "it is what it is." You know, kind of implies that there's nothing that can be done. But I understand it's a very challenging piece of road that we're trying to deal with. But I know Councilor Manning Martin hears a lot of outreach from neighbors. I do as well. So does Councilor Turco. If there's any suggestions that you have, I know yourself and Sergeant Harkins have been very proactive in trying to help us out. But I think whether it's fog lines or narrowing it or anything that you can think of that might be helpful, we really would appreciate the continued look into that so
Sure.
that we can try to, I know it's 2.5 accidents a year on average, but you know, if we could do anything we can to try to limit that, that'd be very much appreciated.
Yep, will do. And as far as Lynn Street, anybody, I'm sorry.
Yeah, hold on. Are there any other questions or comments on? I have one. Well, you're saying it's people looking for their opportunity to get out off of Bartholomew because people aren't courteous anymore and let anybody out anywhere. I live on Dexter Street, and we can't get out of there either. So, yeah, we do look for an opening and take it. And I think in that whole section out there, I think it's not just Bartholomew Street. I think it's any side street that you just can't get out. And I'm wondering if any thought in tweaking the lights around the area so that you could get a break, so that people can get out instead of becoming impatient and taking a risk when they really shouldn't to get out of Bartholomew or any other side street out there. Is that a possibility?
It is. I can certainly meet with fire alarm. They're the ones that deal with the lights and the timing on the lights, and I can go out there and meet them out there, and we can see what the timing is now and see if a tweak, even a couple of seconds on a cycle, that might help, and we can maybe test it and see if it works.
Right, and I'm trying to think, where would the lights be? There are lights at
At the school.
the school.
Right at Dexter Street. And there's lights down at the Brown School, or the old Brown School.
But those are only triggered, the one at Dexter is really only triggered after school when pedestrians hit the
Yeah,
light,
when it
right?
hit the light, yeah.
And then the other one in front of the church is another one, and again, that's only triggered when they hit the lights.
Pedestrians, yes.
And then what is beyond that down Craig's Way? Is there another one down there?
No, there isn't. Heading towards Lynn, no.
There's one at the old Brown School, but that's a pedestrian light too.
Yeah, it's only
So is
on-demand pedestrian.
is there any potential to get either of those pedestrian lights to function as, to tweak them so that you can get a break in the
The only
traffic?
problem, I think, with those lights is they're not right at the intersection of Vets, and they're not right at the intersection of Dexter Street, so to have a set of lights on a street, not at an intersection, changing or cycling through from red to green is probably a little problematic. But I can meet with the people from Fire Alarm, we could take a look at it and see if that's something that we can tweak or experiment with and see if it works.
Yeah, other than people being courteous like we used to be years ago, certainly before COVID, everything changed. Now everyone's just gunning it and they have to get nowhere fast, and they're not courteous. And no one can even get out of their driveways or out of their streets these days. It's really dangerous. But, yes, Councilor Gamache.
Yeah, as far as signalization, the only one that you get the control of traffic heading towards Lynn is County and Lynn Street. And unfortunately, there's so much volume coming in from both directions, you're not going to slow down the traffic, the volume of traffic heading towards Lynn. And that's the major problem. If County Street didn't have the volume of going on to Lynn Street, you might be able to trigger some type with the alarm to slow that and give a little bit of bump between going. But you got is there a free right on red there?
Yes.
Yeah, so that's not, you can't really control those lights to maintain a break in the traffic. So yeah, that's the biggest problem you're going to see. I don't think fire alarm's going to be able to do anything with that
No.
light, and that's the only directional light you have.
It is, and without installing a new set of lights at Bartholomew Street midway to try to help take care of that, and that's a whole nother matter. But again, it's a volume issue that these roads were never designed to have this many cars on them, and now that they're there, they're not going anywhere. I mean, they're there, and we have to kind of deal with the volume issue. But I grew up on Greenwood Road in South Peabody, and I had the same issues trying to pull out of that road onto Lynn Street. So we'll certainly take a look at it and see if there's anything that we can come up with strategy-wise that might be able to help the problem.
All right, excellent, thank you. And so moving on to Lynn Street and Fairview.
Lynn Street at Fairview. There were some complaints about some accidents there, and I did, again, the same distribution study, and from 2016 to 2024, there was a total of 7 crashes at that location over a 9-year period. It's not a high volume of crashes. 2 of those 7 accidents happen to be the same elderly woman that lives on Rockdale Park. One, she was trying to, I think, make a U-turn in the street, and she lost control of the car and wound up in a front yard somewhere. And another one, she was taking a corner, and she pulled out of Fairview, went to Lynn Street, in front of somebody, got hit, and she wound up hitting a pole. But there's certainly not the volume of accidents at that location that would indicate that every accident in the city's going to, I mean, every intersection of the city's going to have an accident or 2 at it here and there. It's just the way it is. And having 7 over a 9-year period certainly does not scream out as being a dangerous intersection.
Any remarks from councilors? Councilor Welton?
Thank you, Councilor Manning Martin. Again, the only thing that I would ask in that area is that's also a very wide area. The sidewalks are actually in pretty terrible shape there also, so I don't know if there, might be an option to kind of restrict it and reclaim some of that sidewalk area too. They're all cement padded sidewalks, and most of them need to be redone because they're all crumbling. So if there's an opportunity to maybe narrow around, from before the intersection to after Fairview, and then that guardrail is kind of in rough shape and the sidewalks are in rough shape, that might be helpful. So as you're looking down the street on Lynn and Bartholomew, if you wouldn't mind kind of considering the same idea with narrowing that a little bit, that'd be really helpful.
The issue you're going to have with a wide roadway like that, though, is there's only certain ways you can narrow the roadway. You either do it with striping, which people ignore, and drive over those if they're going to do it. You do it with those pilasters, which look terrible and get hit and get knocked around, or you bang the curb out and you actually narrow the road, and that's very costly to do, and I'm not sure if the city is willing to go that far with reconstructing those intersections with bumping the curbs out and everything else. So there are options, but we have to look at that. And I'll certainly, with the city engineer, look at those and see if he has some ideas that may be something I didn't mention.
Yeah, at the risk of being the least popular counselor in terms of making South Peabody not look so great, I was really pleased with how it came out with Linfield and Bartholomew, and that was fog lanes in temporary cones. And I know everybody hates looking at cones, but even if it's for 6 months and we see, oh, well, narrowing it in that capacity makes a difference, I would absolutely advocate for that. And if my house gets egged because of it, so be it, So, but I think that could make a difference, and I think it's worth taking a look at. And I appreciate, again, you and Sergeant Harkins have been so great to look at these things and try to come up with cost-effective measures to make a difference. And I know it's a challenging piece of road, but I appreciate your help with that.
No problem.
Thank you.
Councilor Welton? I mean, excuse me.
Oh,
Councilor Melville.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm really familiar with this particular location. 205 Lynn Street was my grandparents' home for 50, 60 years. This is not the first time that location has been before this council. Twice in my lifetime, a car has actually driven into 205 Lynn Street, all the way in through, right through the house. So that's where those 3, if you ever noticed, there's 3 protective barriers put there, and so it was looked at for a long time. The real issue, something to pay attention to, is specifically this is a bus stop heading towards Lynn, and oftentimes when that bus is pulling up, if you're trying to come out, you're going around, or I grew up watching it. That's really, if you would ask me, one of the major issues with that particular intersection. And I know it's been communicated in the past to maybe move that either a little further down, or I know it's not always, that could be a complicated issue, but that's really, if you want to know one of the major security issues there, that's that, which causes folks to adjust to a bus that pulls over. And it's an active bus stop. There's a lot of folks that use that bus, so I'm not saying get rid of it.
Sure.
But maybe if we could move it one way or the other for safety purposes, that's a big reason for a lot of that stuff. So, thank you.
Thank you. Any other councilors? Being none, our last item then, Captain, would be Perkins Street at Emerson Park in Franklin.
So Perkins Street, we had some complaints from speeding, and we worked with Councilor Daigle there, and we installed a electronic radar board up by the Police Fire Memorial up there. And we've been monitoring the vehicles on Perkins Street for speed, and I believe that collects data, that box too, and unfortunately, when we tried to hook it up the other day, the Bluetooth wouldn't hook up to it for some reason. But from our visual observations, from what we've seen, the placement of that radar board there has had an effect on the speed of the traffic. We can also move it to the other side of the street for outgoing traffic as well, but I think it's certainly helped. It hasn't cured the problem. There is speeding on every street in the city of Peabody. There are outliers everywhere, but I think that sign, the presence of the sign, and the councilor can speak on it in her experience, but I believe that the sign has had an effect on the speed on that street and is for the positive.
Councilor Daigle?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yeah, thank you, Captain Richards and Sergeant Harkins, for helping with this. The hard part of that Perkins Street area was where to put that digital speed sign, because when you come up Perkins heading towards the Higgins, people kind of gun it, and then they keep going. And we're fortunate enough to have not one but two crosswalks on Perkins, and they do have blinking lights, and you can hit them. It's not a stop. It doesn't make you stop, but they blink. And some cars that are familiar with the neighborhood do stop. Many don't, to the point my neighbors, and including my son, have to yell at cars that literally almost hit people speeding through there. I don't know what the solution is. A lot of it is our parents rushing to get to school, and a lot of it are people that are cutting through. But it is a particularly important area just because of the number of children that are walking to Higgins back and forth, and there are a lot of residents that walk their dogs. So I think the speed reader has helped in slowing people down, and I'm curious to get that data to see maybe it has. I mean, people, once they get used to it, I think the first few times they slow down and then they speed up again. But I think, I don't know, again, I don't want to copy Councilor Welton and say it is what it is, but I will say, having the police department, they park at the corner of Emerson Park, and just having that cruiser there, that makes a huge difference, not only for the kids and stopping them from fighting when they get out of school, but also for the people that are speeding. So I do appreciate that presence. And I think this actually came about, so I was surprised to see this. This has been one issue, but we also had a complaint from a resident on Franklin Street heading west before you intersect with Perkins Street. Someone had moved in and was concerned with the cars that were speeding. But Sergeant Harkins took a long time. I think a couple councilors were copied on this. He took a long time to monitor, to sit out there, and the way that Franklin Street kind of curves, it's almost impossible to go too fast. So I think his recommendation was that it's okay. The more dangerous intersection is actually where Franklin does intersect with Perkins, because there's kind of a blind spot coming down there.
Coming down the hill.
Yeah, but I'm surprised. I haven't seen any accidents recently, so I think just going slow is the solution if people follow the rules.
I agree, and we do encourage our police officers to go up and sit in that area in the cruisers, because obviously a cruiser sitting there has an appreciable effect on people's behavior, right? So we do that as much as we can. On Franklin Street, we did look at that extensively. Given the physical nature of that street, cars parked on both sides of it, it's a one-way section, very narrow. It's a little bit of a curve that leads up to that stop sign. The speeding, as it was portrayed by the complainant, and people have different perceptions of things. It's physically impossible for the cars to be going as fast as that were portrayed to us. Is there a car or two that goes through there too fast? Certainly is. But it's not something that rose to the level of what the complainant had said. And we don't think anything really needs to be done there other than some monitoring. And you're right, coming down the hill, that blind spot on that corner, that's probably more of a problem. But we haven't had any accidents at that intersection in quite a while. So that's a good thing, I guess.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Are there any other comments or questions for the captain? Being none, I want to thank you very much. This was a lot of work. It was a lot of items that we had in committee, and the amount of time that you and your staff put on it so that you could report out and collect the data for the crashes is very helpful to us. And it's important for the community to know that we are monitoring these things, and that we do take their complaints and concerns very seriously. So I do appreciate all the work you put into this, and maybe we can have you come back up and maybe 3 or 4 months, and
Sure.
you can report back on the suggestions and the discussions we had tonight in effort to make some of these intersections safer?
Sure.
All right. Thank you, Captain.
Thank you.
Have a great night.
You too.
If there's nothing else, motion to adjourn?
So moved.
All in favor? Any opposed? It's a vote. Thank you very much, councilors.